Forgot you have that. Oh my God, I literally just had it in front of me. Here we go. Okay. Got it. Great. So I'm going to do a quick roll call. I'll call your name and just say present or here, whatever feels good to you. Ruth Stalford here. Rod Hamilton.
Here.
Isabella Costa.
Here.
Jen Price Lesher.
Here.
Jackie Kimbrough.
Here.
Am I missing anybody from the board? Nope. Also joining us, Woody Scott, Nita Landecker, Jillian Juman, Kyle Goss, Leslie Thompson, Delora Bell, and Sean Reagan. Okay, so let me just give you the, obviously it's acknowledged that we are recording this meeting, and let me just read the board finding as to why we are doing this by Zoom. Seed School of Los Angeles County Board of Directors determines, in accordance with the Government Code Section 54953E1B, that meeting in person would present imminent risks to the health or safety of attendees. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54953E3, the board has also reconsidered the circumstances of the state of emergency declared by the governor on March 4th, 2020, and finds the state of emergency continues to directly impact the ability of the directors to meet safely in person, and/or that state or local officials continue to impose or recommend measures to promote social distancing. So all of the above. Thank you. All right. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the meeting minutes? Let's start with the October 29th, 2021 minutes. Does anyone have any corrections? Well, all right. All right, so we can do, well, let's.
I move that we adopt the minutes as presented.
I second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. This is Isabel.
Yep.
Hi, this is Jennifer. I'm eating oatmeal. I'm sorry.
Enjoy.
Aye, Jackie.
Thank you, Jackie. Next time I'll call out your names, make life easier for everyone. It's a minute, October 29th meeting minutes are approved unanimously. Move on to November 23rd meeting minutes. Any corrections, additions?
I move that we accept the minutes as presented. It's Rod.
Thank you, Rod. Bruce Stalford seconds. All those in favor, say aye. I'll call your names out. Rod.
Aye.
Isabella Costa.
Aye.
Jackie Kimbrough.
Aye.
Jen Price Lesher.
Aye.
Did I miss anybody? Great. November 23rd meeting minutes are approved unanimously. All right. Feeling good about moving into the next item on the agenda? Look at that. We're almost catching up. So quick update on the temporary site. We need to, I know we approved the lease in our last meeting, but we had some updates around it. And because there have been some changes in the lease, I wanted to make sure that we approved this lease with the language that's in there. So, and just to let you know where the big change was, I know I sent it out and you probably all had an opportunity to look at it. The big difference was around the CUP. And what came based on further review with AJU's attorneys, they believe in, and so does AJU's board, believe that the proposed use that we intend to use the space for is well within their historic use, and that it does not violate any of the CUP. They have prior precedent to document that. And they believe we can proceed as is. And should any issue arise, and that is clearly outlined in this lease, it is AJU's responsibility to remedy that financially and in all ways. So it is clearly, and our attorney, created that language that is in that lease now. And so, he believes this is also the proper course. So just so you know, that is the only change based on what we had originally approved. So any questions around that?
Ruth, if the lease hasn't been signed, then does this mean that the deposit hasn't been sent to HAU? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, we are not, until this is fully executed, we are not releasing the deposit. Correct.
So where is this language about the CUP?
Let me get it. It is right at the first, let me get the lease in front of us. It is in the first few pages. Give me 1 sec. Sorry, I just have to find it. Oh my God, what is wrong with me here?
I guess it's 5.3.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. So do you see it?
I do. I'm looking at it now.
In our next agenda, we will make sure that we actually cite that so that it's easier for everyone to find. We'll cite that in our agenda next time if, something like this comes up again.
Okay, it looks like pretty good words.
Okay, good. All right, so any other questions? All right, so motion to approve the CLA AJU lease as is.
Rod moves.
All those in favor say aye. Ruth Stalford, aye. Rod Hamilton, Jackie Kimbrough, Isabella Costa,
Aye.
Jennifer Price Lesher.
Aye.
Great. Motion to approve the CLA AJU lease is moved, approved. Great. Thank you. All right, look at that. Moving on. Sean Reagan is here to give us a construction update.
Sure.
You may
Hi,
take it
everybody.
away.
Great. So I'm going to show you some pictures in a minute, but before I do that and sort of lose your attention, I will tell you that that construction on the 80% of the site that we can work on is going like gangbusters. So this is the part that is not encumbered by the AT&T fiber optic lines or the sewer line that parallel Vermont Avenue that we discovered this summer. And work is even starting over there. But I did want to convey that for the rest of the site, things are really moving. The pictures I have are from about a week ago, and things are even further along. Really, almost all the first floor slabs in that area will be poured. They're probably poured by now. And within about a week, they'll start framing the deck for the first floor roof, which really becomes the floor of the main quad, and get going with that. At a certain point, they're going to run out of work over in that area, and it's important that the western strip, the strip along Vermont, catches up. But we can talk more about that. Ruth, do you think I can share my screen? It looks like I can. Great.
Oh, let's see.
I'm doing
Woody, are we co-hosts? Woody, are you the host? You're the host now, right?
I think I'm the host.
Yeah,
It looks like Sean's in there.
Great. Okay. Well, if you're looking at a drone photo of the site, then I got it. All right. So like I said, this is December 1st. It's looking at the site from sort of above Vermont Avenue. So it's from the west looking to the east. I always use the green glass government building, which is on the left, which is north of us across 84th Street, as my sort of marker to know where I am. So you can see there was a new slab that's still fairly dark concrete. It's drying in this picture along the 84th Street frontage. I think all of the columns are up. some of these dirt areas, I think this one where there's some equipment is one of the internal courtyards that sink down to that ground floor so that light gets into the classrooms on either side. And then there's a second courtyard farther south, which is up against the gym wall. I think we'll see that better in a minute. So this is looking from 84th Street looking south, and or maybe it's the center of the site looking south, because this box is the gymnasium. CMU or cinder block walls that are raising up. They're almost all the way up to the full height by now. It's probably 2 feet up by now. And on the far right, you can see the strip along Vermont that is untouched as we're dealing with the utility clearances over there. That's that picture. I've got about 5 total. I thought that would be helpful. This is from the northwest corner of the site. So it's the corner of 84th on your left and Vermont on your right. It's a little hard to tell here, but you can see we're starting to dig actually over top of the AT&T and sewer line over here. We found, it's hard to see here, but a new fiber optic conduit that absolutely nobody knew about. And it took AT&T a couple of days to determine that that is empty. And since then, we've started tearing that out. This is from the northeast corner, looking southwest. So the gym's in the distance at the southern side. These are a couple of little 1-bedroom apartments over here that open directly onto 84th Street with little private patios. Most of what you see in here is classrooms. The music room and the art room are over here on the left. Right at our feet is the faculty room. And some of our utilities come in this way. So this is from the south looking north with the government building in the background. At the bottom right is our construction worker parking lot. We're going to outgrow that pretty soon, and the contractors arrange for other parking in the neighborhood. It's our construction trailer on the right. Maybe I'll do one more. Yeah, so that's the northern half of the site again. Let's see if I've got, oh, this is a hard one to figure, but this is really directly overhead the western portion and the utilities. So we have started taking things out here. We've really found a way to work over those conduits. AT&T is cleared of them. There's 3 internet service providers that were in there, all under a contract or leasing arrangement with AT&T. AT&T is completely gone, did all their cross connects, and their wires are dead. Spectrum has yet to move their wires, but we found this workaround to get ourselves moving. And then Zio has moved their wires, but won't cross connect them over until December 15th because they had to notify all their customers, and that was the date that they found. But really, we've stopped letting us slow this down. We're moving over here now. And our big goal is to get this western strip caught up so that by the time we get to the second, maybe the 3rd floor, the rest of the building can rise up as one, because once you get to the upper floors, you can't, like the eastern part of the building isn't structurally sound by itself. Like it's got to connect to the whole thing so it doesn't fall down. So we can only go so high on the east side before the west side has got to catch up. And the strategy we've come up with is giving us a better shot at bringing all that up and getting up to pace. Let me pause there. That's a lot of talking. Any questions about just general progress on site and that type of stuff?
All right, back to that structural thing. This is Jennifer. So you will put this slab in and catch them up by the 3rd floor, did you say? I'm not an engineer, so I don't know like the ins and outs of this, but can you talk a little bit about that? Is that the outer edge of risk? Is that the super safe approach?
Well, we're certainly not going to do anything that is like structurally unsafe. That's
right.
Yeah, that's just
right.
a given, and maybe I should say that really clearly.
Thank you.
There's 2 ways that the eastern side of the building has to relate to the western side of the building. One of the biggest ways is just what I said, right? Like eventually it's got to catch up and it's got to come up together. But the other way is that because how Los Angeles County does their permitting, they won't give you a vertical building permit to really go up out of the ground until they certify that, until the entire pad is level into the subgrade. Okay. They've allowed us to get a partial subgrade permit. It's called pad certified. for the eastern part of the site, which allowed us to start there. And through some very accommodating conversations with the county permit office, they are allowing us to do the walls you see here and the columns that you see here, even with nothing happening on the western part. But we believe that once we set the second floor deck, which becomes the quad, and we can do some things at that level, we don't think they're going to let us pour the concrete for that second floor pad until the western part is at least back to subgrade. And that's the digging that I showed you earlier and the foundations over there. So the more immediate connection between the two parts is just getting the western part up to subgrade, to dirt level, so that we can get the full building permit to go really as high as we need to or safely can on the eastern part. We expect to be at that point on the western side by the 17th. And our schedule right now is showing that we need to be at that point by the 24th of December. So we have 7 days of wiggle room to keep pace on the western part so it doesn't slow down the eastern part. I know that's sort of long and meandering, but my point is that there's this other connection between the two that's more about permitting. And right now it works, but you know, there's not a lot of room for error.
Thank you for that answer. Appreciate that.
Yeah. That's about where we are on construction. And I mean, I should say that even with these machinations to get caught up, the overall schedule has definitely been delayed by AT&T. Bernard's is working on ways to speed construction up and get caught up. And we're looking at ways to do that economically so we don't burn too much of our contingency on those sorts of things. We don't know that whole story yet. It's probably going to be another 2 months until we really know the full impact of it. But it's positive that we're moving forward to these big areas now. And we have a fairly small area that we got to catch up. Our other option would have been to really just completely stand down this summer and do nothing until AT&T got out of the way, AT&T and Zio and Spectrum. And that would have been a pretty damaging situation had we done that.
So Sean, you expect to have a better picture of where we are in terms of, you know, financially with the construction in a couple of months, right? Is that what you're thinking? Okay.
Yeah, that how we can keep resequencing things and essentially get them caught up.
Great. Okay.
What is, excuse me, what is, it's Rod.
Rod started to ask a question and then I lost him.
We lost you, Rod.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Can you hear me now?
I can, yeah.
Yes.
You
Yes.
cannot hear me?
We can hear you. We can hear
Oh,
you.
good. I was just wondering, what is the completion date set forth in the contract?
Well, so the contract, when we signed it, their completion date was something like April 1st of 2023 for the building construction. And we're certainly off of that date. So I think our goal right now is, I think our aspirational goal is to get into this facility before the end of the 22-23 school year. In fact, I remember now, Rod, I think their contractual completion date is March 15th, 2023. Our goal is to get into this facility before the end of the 22-23 school year, our year two. No, I'm sorry, our year one, geez. And part of the things that we'll work on is, you know, resequencing work and accelerating work just to get the construction done faster. But then also there's a realization that in year one, we've only got 125 students. So, you know, it doesn't always help as much as you'd like, but we don't need the paint and all the stuff on the top floor of the building, for example. We've got bed space for 400 in this campus. We only need bed space and classroom space for 125 in year one. So there's some opportunities there that we're working on to get partial occupancy. You know, to do that, all the sprinkler systems have to work throughout, the fire alarm's got to work throughout, but there certainly are a lot of things that we wouldn't need to operate a school for 125 kids.
So I'm sorry to be dense. So the contractual date right now is March 15th. Our aspirational goal is June 30 or what?
No, I think May 1st.
May 1st. Okay. So that's 6 weeks or something. And then, but your last statement about being able to occupy the lower levels before we finish the upper levels, that's based on getting some kind of partial occupancy permit from the county?
That's exactly right.
I see.
Yep.
Okay.
And we started having those conversations, and now that we're largely past the AT&T delay, we can talk a lot more seriously with the county about it, because we have a much better idea of the time durations and the magnitude of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Good questions, Rob. Oh, I should mention that our AJU lease goes through the end of year 1, right? So we're not at risk of being homeless during year 1.
Right.
Let's see, Ruth, am I missing anything? I think those were some of the things that I wanted to say. Oh, and I'm looking forward to seeing many of you later this week. I'm very excited about coming to Los Angeles.
Tomorrow.
Yes, apparently I'm bringing the rain.
Friday. You're bringing what?
I'm bringing
yeah.
the rain and the 50-degree temperatures. You're welcome.
Well, I think if we just all carry umbrellas all day long on Thursday, it won't rain. That's how it works. So, and I'm not going to lie, Sean, this may be the neatest, cleanest construction site I've ever looked at.
Well, I don't know if any of you have worked with Bernard's before, but I've been very impressed, by their team, their organization, and just dealing with what is an overwhelming paperwork activity of doing a building like this. And their ability to be creative about resequencing and solving problems is really refreshing. The idea about how to start working in the western part really came out of, it's interesting. You have these like organized, structured conversations, and that's what you think you do. So I was in Los Angeles, I think in mid-September, and we had all these meetings, everybody was tired, and there were like 5 of us just sitting around this conference table in their trailer on folding chairs and just thinking, man, this is such a problem. AT&T is such a problem. We don't control them. And in this sort of exhausted casual conversation, somebody suggested, wait, what would it, I know we can't, cut their lines, but could we start working over top of them? And then somebody got on the whiteboard and they started scribbling this almost illegible stuff. And somebody else said something, and we really developed this plan in about 15 minutes in almost a side conversation. And it's, that's, I think, a testament to people who are thinking about this stuff all day, every day, and they're good in their experience. And, the ideas come out. I was very proud of that moment.
Well
Great.
done. Thank you. Yeah. Any other questions related to construction update? All right, well, let's move on. Thank you so much, Sean. Very much appreciate it.
You're
So,
welcome. Do you think I can drop away, Ruth, or should I stick around?
oh, you can go. You can go.
Okay.
I know you have stuff to do. Thank you.
I appreciate it. All right, I hope to see at least some of you soon.
Hi,
Thanks.
Sean.
All right, Jillian, all yours. Recruitment update.
Hi, everyone. So 2 recruitments updates today, student and then faculty. Student recruitment as of today, this morning, went on to our application database. We had 25 folks who have started an application. We have 15 that are submitted. And it is mostly Leimert Park area and then South LA. And 1 last night from Watts, because we did a big canvassing with about 3,000 brochures that went out last night. So that's very cool. We've had anywhere from 5 to 10 CBOs join our sessions consistently to learn more about Seed LA and are excited. The one that we held yesterday was a really great group. They were very excited and kind of pumped up and wanting to kind of get out there, and actually immediately went out and sent out a bunch of emails and CC'd me on it. So we have a little bit of a buzz. LA Centennial, if you are hooked up with them, you'll see that they have been posting Seed LA everywhere. We are holding an event in January with Coco. They're actually doing an event on behalf of Seed LA, so they're excited. Brotherhood Crusade has also got us out there in all of their events, which is exciting, including last week, the one with Magic Johnson. So we're out and about. So the word is slowly getting out there, but it needs to speed up, and we need some higher numbers. And so we're in the process of putting together a campaign to do a Lancaster Palmdale focused outreach starting this month and going into January. I've just recruited 2 folks who will work with us part-time to do some canvassing and doing some outreach work and really kind of double down. I've negotiated with the foundation to also provide some extra hands in January. So we're still kind of figuring all of that out, but my plan is to really get out there and be very present in January. Myself and Leslie Thompson are going to be reaching out to those of you who have been doing CBO outreach, just to kind of get a lay of the land of what's going well, what's not, who's communicating with you, who's not communicating. It's a busy time of year. And so what we're finding is, even though people want to help, kind of wrapping your brain around how to kind of help another organization when you're just trying to help yourself, particularly during a pandemic. We're finding a little bit more barriers, even more than usual, around some of the communication. So I'll be reaching out around that. So just look out for our emails, and setting maybe 30-minute time so that we can talk through it with you would be really helpful. Really interested in POP and probation. We do have a connection with POP, and they're doing some work with us. So that's exciting. That's parents who are working through probation and those kinds of things. Foster care, we have not been able to penetrate as much as we'd like to. And I think it's because they're overwhelmed. The Christmas time is a hard time for foster care, right? I'm looking at Ruth because you really know that. So I think we're just going to need a little bit of strategy on how to get ourselves in front of families, because those are the families that we actually need to help fill out the applications. Just kind of handing the application and walking away isn't gonna work. So a little strategy one-on-one with y'all will be really helpful. So please look out for those emails. I'm gonna pause there. Is there any questions or thoughts before I move into HR stuff?
Julian, what would be your hope for where our numbers are at? You said, 15 applications submitted, 25 pending.
Yeah.
What would be your ideal?
I wanted to end the year with 75. And so we're starting the next year kind of really looking at 200 applicants that we need to get. So we're behind. I will also say, when I reach out to my CEO colleagues, we're all feeling it. And so what I'm seeing is a huge amount of marketing and radio, which we're also connecting with, by the way, and billboards. And we're going to see a lot more advertisement, much more like a business for schools everywhere coming in the next month. So I think we're all feeling it. I still don't like it. Yeah. So you'll see me I'm always going to be hard on our numbers. Any other thoughts or questions? I appreciate your excitement, Jennifer. We'll need someone to be a cheerleader while I'm being like, no, not enough. So that will be good. Appreciate it. So going into hiring. So one of the conversations I had is we need to mobilize some monies. And we just had that conversation with Kyle around making sure that we are hiring some folks a little bit earlier so that we are kind of staffing ourselves in a really great place. So December 15th, we're dropping about 30 job descriptions on the website. And we're also starting a campaign, virtual campaign. Alair's helping with that, right? Give a little kudos to that, to kind of bump it up. And I'm sure if you're on LinkedIn, you see that everybody's advertising already. I mean, it is getting wild and crazy. And they also are really creative ads. So we're thinking about videos. I mean, someone mentioned a TikTok dance. That's not usually my drive, but we'll do whatever it takes. So we're going to come up with a social media campaign to kind of pump it up. I will also send out the job descriptions to all of you guys, so you have it. It's also going to be on our website. In priority order, I'm looking to HR and operations first. That's the folks we need. And then I'm also going to be recruiting some of the leadership team, including the principals, both principal of academics and principal of student affairs, who can also hopefully help us do some of the hiring later on. So that's kind of the strategy, and then fill in a little bit from there, but it's a lot of moving and shaking. We're going to do some kind of group interviews. So you'll see us reach out to you if you're interested in participating in some of those that are coming out. And so we're hoping to be fully hired by May, June, but I am also concerned around that too. You've also seen the hiring crisis in education. So we have to think creatively about being competitive around benefits. I just saw last night they posted, we had 2 different charter schools post benefits as part of their job description and the actual amount they're giving people. So, you know, people are getting a little rowdy. They have incentives that folks are putting on their job descriptions. I mean, it's gangbusters. It's time to kind of like put on our little punching bags here. So, you know, we are thinking creatively about that. We're going to talk a little bit more about the budget in a few minutes. But all of those are things I'm kind of monitoring and keeping kind of abreast about, because that's what we're competing against. What is good is we're brand new, which will scare some and excite others. So thinking a little bit about kind of how to brand ourselves in a creative way so that folks want to be part of something new and innovative and help change the world. So that's kind of where we're at. Pausing. Any thoughts, questions? And I'm a little bit like Snuffleupagus over here, so I apologize if I'm pausing at different times.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, Jackie.
As we're ramping up our staffing and operations, do we have office space in the community or any other element of visibility for people who are there other than the building itself?
No, and I think it's a good question. And I'm interested in if you have suggestions, being that you're there, Jackie, or if you're inviting us over.
I wish we had the space.
I know you're jammed in too, but I think that is something to think about. I mean, one thing we have been using, you know, periodically is Ruth's office to do just preliminary meetings, but that's not in the neighborhood. We have been advertising your business for application support.
Right. You know, actually, and we can talk about this offline, but directly across the street on Vermont, a little bit north, there's a little suite of 4 or 5 offices. I don't know if they're occupied, but when we were in construction, maybe 10 years ago, we occupied a couple of those, maybe 900 square foot suites. So, and they worked.
Okay. Let me contact you offline and see about fees and that kind of stuff. The other one is, because, you know, I'm free is my favorite word. We have some partnerships and friendships we've started with some of the churches around.
Okay.
So I wonder if that also is another modality, but let me give you a call next week and talk through it. Is that okay?
Okay. And I think that's a good idea, but I really think something that has your visibility, not just the church's visibility, but the seed visibility, the seed name for walk-ins or for other folks to see you entrenched there, getting entrenched.
Okay.
Okay.
Good feedback. Yeah. Thanks, Jackie. I'll call you next week.
Okay. Sounds good.
Any other thoughts, questions, ideas? I'll take anything. Okay. Well, you know where to find me. And appreciate it. And I'm going to pass it back to myself. Okay, it's me again. Okay, great. So credit cards we talked about. We'll, you know, first kind of figure out the secretary work and then kind of go from there. Hopefully the goal will be able to kind of get it through. We are charging a great deal amount for recruitment. So we may circle back and do a little quickie with you so that we can get it done sooner rather than later. So we're entering in the new year ready to go. For budget planning, I wanted to launch, can I share my screen, Woody?
Okay, you want to share?
Great, thanks. Just give me a moment. And I'm going to invite Kyle also at different times. If you want to jump in, please do. Can you see my screen?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. And then I'm, geez, I'm like the worst coordinator of this. Just give me a minute. So we'll talk about benefits in just a second. But I wanted to talk a little bit around the budget. So I received access to kind of some of the budget end of September, I would say, Ruth, is that right? Around September, we kind of looked a little bit at the budget. Kyle and I looked at the budget. Ultimately, what was really important, I think, moving forward as part of the strategy was to make sure that we did some backwards planning around the budget. So not just what's happening right now, but what's happening in 2026 as kind of a picture for what's moving forward. We also needed to kind of really make sure that the budget, although proposed as part of our charter and part of the things that we were kind of thinking about, it wasn't finalized in the sense of something that we can actually work with and play with and start to rely on. And so this became really an important project over the last month and a half to make sure that what I'm proposing for you guys for approval starting next year in January and moving forward is actually something that we can work with and kind of develop. So that's kind of the intentionality of this conversation, is to start planting some seeds around what I'm seeing and what I've kind of gathered, so that I'm making recommendations that make the most sense for Seed LA. So let me just talk a little bit about my process. So kind of looking at it, I did kind of an initial analysis around the LA market. So there was a base proposal that we had sent, and most of you have seen, to LEGO. And I wanted to do some comparative based off of my understanding and experience around the LA market, the salaries, the incentives, the benefits, the marketing needs, and kind of make some adjustments from there. What I also did is met with each head of school for each seed school to discuss personnel needs, salaries, seed model, and priorities. What I found is that although the Seed LA budget had a lot of the things that LA County had required us to do, including deans, social workers. Those are things that LA County is mandating, plus the school needs. But there were some pieces to the budget that didn't really match completely the seed model, particularly the leadership component. And so some of those conversations with other heads of schools to prioritize what was most important, what works, what doesn't, was an important practice. What we then did is kind of scaled out and looked at 2022 all the way to 2026. That's how we kind of moved into our year zero current budget to kind of say, what if we're going to be successful in 2022, who do we need in place right now in order to be able to do it? That's an important practice just to make sure that we're kind of, checks and balances for us. So with this, we kind of thought about, what positions do we desperately need year one? What positions do we need year 2, 3, and 4, and then so on. And then also kind of how does having a temporary site impact budget compared to having our permanent site. So that's kind of the work that we did, trying to be thoughtful and trying to kind of also make sense. I engaged ExEd through this partnership for comparative cost analysis, right? Like what's happening across different charters that they're working with, of course, also my colleagues. And then I met with Ken Arndt, who's the former CFO and CDC and foundation consultant around budget, had many years working with seed schools, kind of knows his stuff about the history and kind of what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, to do a needs assessment and audit of our budget to kind of say, where are we being too cheap and where are we being too expensive, with ultimately kind of my bare bone question, but also kind of where are we cutting, or where are we doubling down where it doesn't make sense to the actual model. And he found us to be very conservative and actually bumped up a lot of our numbers and bumped up some of the positions that he thought was core and important, including security and other things that make the school function. So that was some good learning. So this was the process that I kind of took to make sure that I had some checks and balances and wasn't just building from my corazon, from my heart. Pausing for just a minute, any question around or any thoughts around this process?
I would just commend you, Jillian. I think that this was a very thoughtful and thorough process. So thank you. And thank you for sharing it with us. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Isabel. So that leads us to kind of some of the discrepancies and some of the differences here with the budget. And I'm going to have Kyle just kind of update us on just preliminary numbers around what that looks like and what we might have to think about in the new year's around fundraising, which we always knew we would do fundraising every single year. It's more about coming to a kind of a goal set of what that looks like. So this is kind of where we landed. Our staffing needs were different than the original budget. So SEED has a 15-to-1 model for student life counselors for a couple reasons. One is to kind of form a housing unit so that you feel a little bit like a family on campus. The other piece is that many of our students have to have social workers and caseworkers and all those kinds of things that come with family support. And so it's important to have one person that's really driving that work. What we tried to do is 1-to-20. And after I spoke to all of the heads of schools, they really advised against that. They thought that was not the place to cut. So I think we should start out with what we think will work and then kind of work backwards versus other way around. So we had only planned for 16 student life counselors, and we actually will need by year 4, 26 student life counselors. So that's 10 additional student life counselors for the 15-to-1 model. We did not originally plan for a chief operating officer. That I do not recommend not moving forward without a chief operating officer. We need somebody that's kind of overseeing and kind of really looking deeply at kind of how the school is operating and being most responsible for that in the partnership with ExEd. And so that's something that was typically is at most SEED schools, and we did not have a plan for that in the first budget that we crafted. Director of advancement, we will need that at some point. We'll have to make a decision on when. I put it in the budget for year 3 or 4, but this person is responsible for grant writing and development. Right now, Rebecca is doing that work in partnership with the foundation and us. At some point, we have to make a decision on whether that's important to also have somebody part of SEED LA that does that work. And so that wasn't part of the original plan. Assistant principals or an SEL focused coordinator or even development director is something that we would need to add, and I would recommend that we have. We did not have enough custodial folks and additional facilities, including security, gardeners, those kinds of things, particularly that we're going to be a garden school. Whoop, whoop. Those things weren't accounted for also in the budget. Also, kind of at first glance, salaries were about $10,000 to $15,000 less than what the current market is in LA. So we had to kind of match it and kind of get it to a place after looking at different charters, LUSD, kind of where things are. We needed to kind of get the salaries in that place. And then we're going to have to really consider what kind of travel stipends we want to provide folks, the kind of employees. We want to make sure we have diversity and just kind of all different backgrounds across LA and possibly beyond. Most of our staff will not come from the Bel Air area. And so in that first year, what does that look like? We've already had some folks pull out of interviews with us when they have found out that we may have a temporary site that's not in South LA. So we may have to think about a travel stipend for the first year, getting creative around what we want to do to kind of incentivize that first year.
This might be a good place, I'm sorry, Jillian, to partner with Metro. They will be willing to provide any type of support or travel stipends on their network.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion to kind of consider. Yeah. In addition to that, as we discussed last time, 403B retirement plan, you guys know this, California is no joke around benefits. That's not the place where you can cut. And so we made some decisions around that to be competitive around CalSTRS, but also other networks around that was more expensive than the original plan. And then we're going to talk a little bit about medical care, but schools in the system are paying anywhere from averages of up to $9,000 to $10,000 per employee per year. So we had to do some increasing there to make sure that we're matching the market for LA. And then we also needed to, we added debt covenants, which is pricey. And every year we needed to make sure that we added that. Kyle, you can probably provide more context on that. And then I also wanted to just include a strategy that I deeply believe in and wasn't part of the original building of the budget, which is build strong teams first and then build diversity later. And what I mean by that is get as many seasoned folks that we possibly can muster, some folks that really have built schools before and know what that looked like in the first 1 to 2 years. And then in year 3, 4 and beyond, you mix up your recruitment strategy to bring in newer folks that you can train and develop, but really having folks in the beginning that can really set the tone and then start training new people as they're coming in. There is a philosophy and there's a way of working, and it is popular also in LA where you don't do that. You actually hire folks that are brand new, even from TFA, and have just maybe 1 or 2 seasoned folks in year 1, and then you build from there. That's not what usually I would recommend or think would make a lot of sense for CLA. So how that impacts the budget is we're not hiring folks at $55,000 a year for teachers. We're staffing more at 70,000. And that's even conservative when you have some science and math teachers that are starting more at 82,000 in LA market. So I just wanted to throw that in there because there is a bias-y that I have when I'm looking at the budget that may be a little bit different, and it's grounded in that strategy. Pausing for just a minute. Any thoughts, questions, or clarity I can provide? I can barely hear myself talking. So make sense, not make sense? Okay. Kyle, do you mind jumping in just a little bit and just provide a little bit for what we're looking at from year 1 to year 5? If this was a plan that we kind of moved forward with, what could that possibly mean for fundraising? And this is separate from what monies we might need to kind of think about and raise for kind of facilities and extra costs that we all know that happens when we're building a brand new school. So can you just jump in for just a minute?
Yeah, I think what I would say is what we did is when we kind of went back to the kind of base budget, which I think there are a few budgets floating around through all these processes, but like where we started, we stripped out any kind of philanthropy so that because there were a few kind of uncommitted philanthropy plugs in late years to make sure that some of these debt covenants were met in the budget that I started with. And so this has 0 philanthropy in it. And basically kind of, I think taking in what Jillian has laid out here, we're looking at kind of, in order to basically have a revenue of around $1 million a year, which is basically what we forecast to need in order to meet the lease coverage ratios and other things required as part of our facilities deal. We're looking at around $2.5 million gap with this model, maybe increasing a little bit towards 3 towards the end of the 5 years. But it's basically 2.5 to 3. And I think I would add a couple of things, couple of caveats, being that we have pretty conservative state revenue growth, considering some of the news that's come out about kind of budget surplus and things like that. So there might be some real movement there. But again, it's given that our enrollment is fairly low, the LCFF is not going to kind of totally drive huge amounts of change there, but there could be big buckets of state funding that help eat into that. But basically, based on this approach, we're looking at about $2.5 million a year of a whole.
So thank you, Kyle. So again, this is just preliminary conversations. We're going to be sitting down much more in January and having much more concrete. We can look at staffing models. We can do those kinds of things. But I wanted to make sure at least I was setting kind of a picture of what we've been working on, what we've been looking at, and then just get any preliminary thoughts that you guys might have that we need to consider and think about. So I just want to pause for a second before we get into healthcare. If there's any kind of thoughts, questions that you'd like to shoot our way, that would be really helpful now.
Jillian, can you just confirm for me, so that the 2.5 million, I think that Kyle just quoted, that is on the conservative side based on other seed campuses and the conversations that you've had with the head of schools?
I would say that that is an accurate picture based off of our conservative work that we did with the schools. In other words, I mean, Maryland has a lot of funds coming in. And so their staffing model is very large and very fun. If you look at it, we didn't go full scale that way. So we just that's the way we were conservative.
And Jillian, sorry, overall, the percentage increase on the budget, do you have a sense of what that is relative to what we predicted? And then my second question is the $2.5 million gap, will that all be coming from philanthropic sources? That's the hope?
That would be the hope. And I think that's where we would need to make some decisions come January around our comfort level with that and what makes a lot of sense for us. Percentage wise, I don't know. I can send it out. I don't have that math. I know that it's 2.2 out of some number. We'll send it out. Kyle, are you a faster math person, or do we need to send it out?
I'd say let's send it out, but
Okay.
we're looking like year one. I mean, it'll vary by year. Obviously, it'll be probably because it's kind of a flat number, but in our expenses in year one now would be about $10 million, I think. If you figure it's almost 20% on that, but it would shrink over time.
So we'll send out an exact number, but we're looking at approximately 20%.
Okay. And that is all allocated toward philanthropy. It's not a blend of the original public dollars and philanthropy.
Yeah,
Right.
that number is just around the philanthropy.
Okay. And have you done a landscape at all, or would it be helpful if I took a look at some things around what other standalone charters are yielding in terms of their philanthropic lift each year? I know what some of the networks are earning, but the standalones are a little bit different.
I
Just
would
as
love
a
to see that.
point of
Yeah.
perspective. Okay.
I think as much data as we can get, I think it's helpful. And I also think, I am interested in, and my guess is like Leslie Poole might have a little bit more of this information, but what is the LA comfortability around fundraising just in general? Like, I don't have that information. You probably do, Jennifer. I'd love to talk with you about it.
I mean, it's all public data, so I'm not speaking out of school here. It's
Right.
all in the 990s.
Yeah. Okay.
Happy to share what I know.
Thank you.
And for that would be really helpful, because that does answer a lot of questions, right? It gives people a good sense of what the appetite is.
Potentially, right? It's a data point
Yeah.
or a series of
Right.
data points. Each one is so dependent on the particular school and the community in which it sits and the access to
Correct. Yeah.
the philanthropy.
Yeah.
The other piece, which I don't know, because we don't have students right now. I know there's still a lot of COVID funding out there, especially related to SEL stuff and things like that. And I'm hoping we'll still be able to tap into some of that.
Yeah,
So
I
let's-
think
I think we're going to say the same thing, Kyle, which is they're not so friendly with new schools around COVID money, but there is SEL money available. Kyle, we're going to say the same thing. Go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, it's a little bit of a TBD, but I do think some of Jillian's earlier staffing conversation, like it puts Seed at a disadvantage in hiring, because I feel like so many schools are able to put incentives towards staffing using those funds, and those funds push out multiple years. And so I think the environment is such that other schools have access to those. And at this moment, Seed doesn't. And I think it just kind of underlines some of those competitiveness lines that Jillian laid out earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. I was bummed. I sent Kyle this whole thing for COVID, and then we couldn't access the funds. So, okay, perfect. So as things rise up, I'm thinking in January, Jennifer, it'd be really helpful to kind of discuss some of your kind of knowledge and what you pulled together. I think that might help give all of us a lay of the land if you're comfortable with that.
Absolutely. The other thing that comes to mind is, there's individual philanthropy, there's institutional philanthropy, but then there's also the whole tranche of government grants. And I know you just mentioned that the COVID funding is not necessarily going to be as easy for you to access, but do we have someone paying attention to that lay of the land as well?
Yeah, I wonder if it'd be great to pull in Rebecca. I think she's doing some work around that, but in all honesty, I think that's the conversation we need to have around do we need to actually put some money into having a staffer that's part of Seed LA so that we can actually be very clear about what monies we want to do? Right now, we're working in partnership with the foundation, which has been really helpful, but we may have to get a lot more targeted, to your point.
And I would just say, like, from an ex-ed perspective, I mean, we're paying attention to the kind of baseline of state funding and different special. I think what we're likely to see is a whole lot of these very specialized buckets of funds rolling out in the near term, medium term. All that right now is focused on this year, but as we kind of get closer to next year, that's something that we'll be highlighting and kind of helping support. But
Right. Is XED also tracking all of the mental health dollars, DCFS, probation, all the Measure J, like all that other tranche of county funding and availability? I don't know that we would qualify for any of that, but somebody should be minding that as well, or mining it.
Right now, it looks like me scrolling through at midnight and then emailing Rebecca. So that's what it looks like right now. I think that we need a strategy. I think you're right. We need somebody kind of looking at it. I think Rebecca's doing some of that work, and then some of it, we haven't really streamlined the focus the way that we can.
I also think, correct me if I'm wrong, but XED is on top of some of that also because of all the work that they do with all the other schools. So there is some of that, and we just have to synthesize all of that information.
Yeah, I would say not the monies that were just listed, but the previous monies around state and yeah, I think we can get more clear about that, Kyle, for our next meeting. Is that fair?
yeah, I mean, I think it's things that go through either LACO or CDE. I feel like we're plugged into, and then outside of that, I would say it's not as common.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm
Thank
happy
you.
to talk more about it.
Still super helpful, all of it.
Yeah. I wanted to go into benefits. My hope was to talk about benefits. It's not something that we typically vote on, but I want to get your thoughts and kind of, I would say like kind of preference around some of the benefits fight, because it's a fight in LA right now. It is the tool that everybody is using right now to recruit, which I think is interesting. I wanted to share it with you when we did the 403B conversation. At that point, I did not love our broker. And so I did some broker changes in between. So now I'm circling back. So apology for the piecemealing here, but that's kind of what happened. So again, I like to go through kind of my thinking so that we are aligned, and then we can also, disagree around points of these areas. But this is a criterion I was using in my head to kind of make sense of health benefits in California. I was looking for flexibility to start a plan with 2 employees and be able to redo the plan for a better price in June. So once we hit 30 employees, the price for benefits is so much better. So what I was looking for was someone who would be willing to make the switch with us later, right when we were in June, so that we could do some price cost analysis and get a better situation for employees. As you know, and many of you know better than I do, starting out in a small group is never the easiest thing. I was looking for medical plans that were approved by CalChoice so that we could provide current and future options for employees and for Seed LA without penalty. What I found in the last couple of years, particularly in Los Angeles, is I've had to adjust quite a bit around benefits from year to year, depending on the prices and the things that are coming out. 2022 has a huge price leap. And so CalChoice allows us to do that without any penalty. It also allows employees to choose which package they want without penalty. Provide top-notch healthcare to employees. I looked mostly at platinum and gold packages to make sure that we are doing good healthcare, particularly during a pandemic. That's not the place we want to be cheap. Reliable and knowledgeable broker who has a plan for engaging Seed LA staff to support an enrollment of benefits. And monthly costs are LA competitive for both LA, Southern California-based employees to eliminate barriers for recruitment. So that's kind of the criterion I was kind of holding myself accountable to as I went along. And this is where I'm landing. And the question I'm going to have for you is kind of a little bit around kind of what what kind of gamble do we want to take? So I'm gonna get us to that question, but I'm just kind of laying it out. I really want us to go with Toby Kennedy. I've worked with him before from Montage Insurance Solutions. He's not only funny, he's just great. He's been great around pre and post engagement. He's very responsive. He's worked in LA and most charter school networks for the last 20 years. I just like him. He is able to start with a plan with 2 employees whenever we're ready to do so. And then he will change the package completely in June. So the only thing we'll have to do is in teacher and staff contracts, just be very clear that benefits are offered, and we will be switching our package in June to make sure that we have the most competitive package.
Well, Julie, you're changing the package in June, but the fiscal year starts in July. Is that intentional?
No, it's just when we have 30 employees. But yes, it does work out for us though, Woody. So here's kind of what the package is going to look like. It probably looks like most of things in LA because that was purposeful. Pet insurance through Nationwide, 25,000 life and 25,000 AD&D through Anthem Blue Cross. That's the highest amount we can get when you're under 30. When we get to 30 and above, we have more flexibility on those numbers. Dependent care account and an HSA health flexible spending account will be part of the package. We're looking at 90% coverage for employees and 75% coverage for children and spouse and domestic partners under CalChoice for both Kaiser Platinum and Kaiser Gold. And then Kaiser Platinum base coverage, which means we would cover as much as the Platinum coverage would have for employees for everyone. And then you can buy up on Anthem PPO Gold, Anthem HMO Platinum, and Anthem HMO Gold. And for the HMOs, that buy up is very small, which I'm glad to say that we're able to work out a plan that really allows some flexibility around those HMOs. The PPO, we were able to kind of work it out where it's the buy up is real and it's something people are gonna have to make choices on, but affordable. And then 50% coverage for dental and for vision. And we're going with Blue Shield and Anthem for those 2 ones, just because they gave us the better packages. So that's where that lives. What that looks like, which is important to me, right? Affordable healthcare is important. And we wanted to make sure that we not only matched it with some of the foundation numbers, but also some of the matching across. Is an employee, if they took Kaiser Platinum as an example, or even Anthem HMO, that it would be about $15 to $20 more per month, but it would be $48 per month for Kaiser with their partner $239 and family $397. So that's running in the same kind of market area that most are having right now. I'm going to pause here. Thoughts, questions before I get to my slide, which is another option.
What are the costs to seed for going with this? Like how much do we pay cost per employee for them to provide the coverage?
Yeah, so right now how we kind of organized it, and then we can kind of play, because anytime we do a first year, it's always a guess, right? Because you have some people here, some people here. So we were conservative and put every employee at 9,000, knowing that probably most of them will be closer to 5,300 or 6,000. And then we'll have a couple of families that will need the 9,000 and we'll balance it out. So we're hoping to actually end the year with a little bit of a positive, but we're being conservative in that way. Is that, Kyle, would you say that I said that correctly?
I think, yeah, I'd say that's right.
Okay.
It's basically for, say, like a 35-year-old on the kind of seed side. I think it's a little under 6,000, but you know, it's all age dependent and early on.
And it gets funky. I mean, something that we talked about is like when you're doing the startup process, as you guys know, once we switch into actually a plan with 30 or more employees, they do an average between all the age groups of everyone in your company. And so where it would get funky and we'd have to kind of make sure we're transitioning folks in the right way is if we have employees that, Kyle and I were joking, we were reading it and we were considered old on the list. So anybody 40 plus If you have folks that are 40 plus, and then you have folks that are 20, right? The folks that are 20 will have to kind of pay a little bit more to balance out the fact that we have folks that are above 40. We're ancient, right? Above 40. So that's kind of so that's where we're going to have to kind of make sure we're being very thoughtful as we kind of move along each year and get bigger and bigger with a better plan. Does that make sense how I explain that? Okay. So here's the other piece is that one of the conversations I had was with the foundation around joining their healthcare, right? Which in some ways makes things a lot easier, in some ways makes things a lot more competitive, or not easier in different ways and maybe less competitive. But I wanted to throw it out to kind of get your thoughts. Here's where we're at. So the foundation has the option of, there may be an option to be able to add Kaiser to their plan at some point. Currently, they use United Healthcare, and they're also considering Care First Healthcare. So those are the kind of ones that they've considered in the past. United Healthcare is a solid provider nationally. When I spoke to about 5 brokers and then some CFOs in LA, their message to me was like, it's not really a competitive option in Southern California in the sense of advertisement, right? You guys are starting out. United Healthcare serves most kind of big, larger medical needs out here. I think there's just local ones that it doesn't, but it is a solid one. Kyle has it; he likes it. Care First is an East Coast one only, but so that's not necessarily an option. Both PPO options, here's the kicker here. They're not approved by CalChoice and South LA. So what it kind of does is it locks us into a particular plan where we would have limited adaptations or changes that we can make from a CLA standpoint. Legally, when I'm speaking to lawyers, which I did, selecting to be a part of a large foundation group does lock us in legally because you're making the argument that we are part of a foundation, not a standalone charter. It would require some legal support to move us back into a local CLA individual plan if we ever wanted to in a long-term process. It is, though, easier to change if we started out as a smaller group and then wanted to move into a bigger group. Now, we could never getting out of that would be harder. But that transition to make an argument that we are now going to join a larger foundation later, if staff said, hey, we don't care, we could do United Healthcare, which might be the strategy that we do. And lastly, one of the things I was thinking about is like, well, we could just offer Kaiser. And that was really poo-pooed as a bad plan. It does not make us competitive for hiring. That's more of an option that we'd want to do later on. If we have 99% of employees that want Kaiser, that might be something we do. The other issue around that is that Kaiser is voted the lowest in California for mental health care. And so that was not recommended that we start out with just one option for folks. So I want to pause. Is there any questions around this? And then the question I really have for us is kind of what is our stance on this? Do we feel like we should say kind of screw it and let's just do United Healthcare and figure it out later? In my mind, that's not the argument I want to make with employees who have a strong opinion about Anthem. So just curious. So pausing here, any thoughts on this slide? And then I'll ask the question around opinions. Okay, I like that. Oh, go ahead, Isabel.
I'm just curious, Jillian, how does this plan work for you is what I'm curious. And
the original one?
Yeah, the one that you just presented.
Yeah, I think it does.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it works. I think we're paying a little bit more because we're startup than I have paid in the past, but it's nothing that that we can't fix in June.
Okay.
Any other, thanks for that question.
Elaine, you may have already said this. When do we have to make a firm decision about this?
I'm planning on, we need 2 employees. So as soon as we are in the interview process for our next employee, I'd like to lock it in. This is not necessarily a vote item, but I'd rather us be in consensus, at least on what side we want to be on
Right.
before
right.
fine. Yeah. So we have a little bit of time to change our minds, but I also think it's, if we were to say like, we really want United Healthcare, I'd want to talk to the foundation sooner rather than later. So is there any opinions? Let's move into that then. Do we have a strong opinion either way, or just kind of like, let's just fumble through? Where are you sitting?
Actually,
Well,
could you put that other slide back up?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Rod, I thought I heard you start.
yeah, well, I agree that we need a choice in addition to Kaiser, nothing against Kaiser, but I think that choice is a good thing. Seems like starting small, though with greater costs, provides the flexibility to move ahead in June on our own without entanglements with the foundation. My head is spinning, as it always does, about talking about insurance, but I think you have a good direction.
Okay. Thanks, Rod. That's helpful.
Yeah, and Rod, I agree that, healthcare is so important to people, and these days more than ever. And this dovetails into incentivizing, the hiring of really great people. And, I think this is a very important discussion. And so I would, agree with Rod in the assessment.
I think the healthcare is like an implicit resume for the organization. If you have a good healthcare plan, then it shows you're a serious player. And I think that colors people's reception on other aspects.
Yeah. Isabel, and then is there, oh, and Jen, do you guys have an opinion to share?
So actually, I think my opinion was just stated. I think the that last thing that you said about Kaiser and the again, no disrespect to Kaiser, we love them. They're a
Yeah.
part of our plan, but we also have choice, and I think that's the most important thing, as Rod shared.
Okay. Appreciate that. Isabel, do you have any thoughts?
Nothing to add, just that I agree. It's a nice recruiting tool, and choice is incredibly important, in particular with people with families. Yeah, I just agree with your recommendation.
Do we feel that this is okay? That this feels just kind of, we're all in LA?
Do we know the impact to the budget overall? And is this already baked into the budget with the additional 2.5?
It is, it's baked in, hoping that we save a little bit of money in the end, but it is baked in.
And Jillian, the 90% coverage for employees, is that comparable, or is that more generous than other schools? Like, how does it compare to other schools that you're aware of, at least?
So the average in Los Angeles is 85%. Our prices are a little bit higher, so that's why we boosted it to 90%. And so that's what I would say about that. I think we put it at 90% to be competitive and be similar.
Okay.
I would say that our 75%, I mean, Kyle and I went back on this 500 times, but I would love it to be at 80% coverage for children and spouse and domestic partners. I would feel better about that. I think where we kind of landed in 75% is we know that there's going to be some significant bumps in the next couple years, where if we do have folks who are ancient and not ancient, which is how healthcare sees us, right? Like ancient versus not ancient. That we are going to have some young people, particularly our student life counselors and those folks, who are going to feel a very significant bump. So that's where we landed on our 75%. I don't love it, but I think long-term it makes the most sense.
Julian, can I just, I think what I'd add to is it's when you look at, when I look across clients that I work with, like that the employee only cost, whether it's 90 or 100 is not the driver of cost. The driver of cost is what you're providing for your kind of partner and family and your kind of staff makeup, right? And so it's often hard to tell the difference between, like, you might have somebody with a really generous family package, but their entire staff is made up of employee only and their cost is really low, right? And so it's this, like, you want to try to recruit you know, a kind of a diverse staff, and you want to provide that, like, but if you had a big group of partner plus family, like, it's going to drive that 75% is going to drive cost up real fast. So it's a little bit of a guessing game. It is kind of a liability to have that. I think that's, you know, I think Julian said, the broker said it's 75 is kind of what the going rate is, but like that is kind of the big liability piece here in the out years. And again, it'll probably shift around as things change, but that's kind of where your budget gets made or broken.
And that's kind of, so I think we're being smart about it. I think for me, if I'm going to speak from my heart, I don't care. I like to do 100%. I think if there's one area to spend money on and go and make sure we have monies for it is healthcare. So that's, I'm always split a little bit there. But I think this is a smart way to start. Any other last thoughts that I should consider before I take my slide down? Okay. Appreciate it. I don't have to sign on the dotted line until we have a second employee, or we at least are recruiting. So if you have additional thoughts or opinions, shoot them my way. Shooting it back to you, Ruth.
Thank you. Enormously helpful. I'm trying to sort something out here in our next, and I'm also gonna have to take like a 3-minute break in a minute. So the next the next part of our agenda is the partnership review. And originally we had planned to have Brian Holman, who is one of our attorneys, join us for that, to sort of talk through these, you know, the summary of all of these agreements, which I think is really helpful for all of us to see and to get an understanding of how the interplay of all of these partnerships. But I'm sorry, I keep looking down at my phone because I'm getting texts. I think he has an emergency. I haven't quite been able to sort out what's going on. So assuming that he is not going to join us, there are a couple ways we can do this. First, I want to make sure that everybody had a chance to look at the document. And there are a couple of ways we can do this. Is we can just have a general conversation about this, and then we can schedule a special meeting. We can do two things. We can provide Brian with questions after this meeting that we can send him, and then we can have another meeting, another special meeting where we just discuss these items and those questions. But I would love to get, you know, since I'm sure some of you actually looked at all of this and read it, it would be really helpful just to sort of get a sense of what some of the thoughts are, if you guys are comfortable with that. So, Isabel?
Yeah, that sounds great. So questions I wrote as I was reading through it. I'm curious who's responsible for this. It's on the CLA side. So as I was reading through a lot of the reports and a lot of the compliance issues that are associated with these, it would be helpful to know, like, which position, or is this Jillian? Is this like, who is the person that's providing all of the information to make sure that we are in compliance with all of these? I had another question. You know, are these similar to the agreements that the Seed Foundation has with other school sites? I'm curious what it looks like for other schools, and because it did seem, maybe rigid isn't the right word, but it seemed a little bit onerous on Seed LA for some of these agreements.
I don't know if Woody, I do know that, so I'm going to share things that probably everybody already knows and just, you know, nod along with me. But CDLA is very different than the other partnerships. So Maryland and DC both, and Woody, correct me if I go off the rails here, but Maryland and CDC are actually affiliated with the foundation a little bit differently. And Woody, I'll leave you to kind of talk through like what that is. But their relationship and even the sharing of their board is just a different affiliation. We are a standalone charter that is in partnership with the foundation, which is very new. And partly, I think, responsible for like some of the fuzziness between the execution of some of these agreements and kind of how we make sense of them, even down to like who's responsible. And then Florida is a little bit more similar to us in the sense that they have a lot of standalone responsibilities. However, the head of school actually is part of the foundation. So that's actually a little bit different than what we have here too, which I'm employed by the board. So there's just a different configuration there. Woody, do you have any more elegant?
I mean, that was pretty
plugins?
accurate. I think to Jillian's point, the foundation has a different financial relationship and management relationship with CDC. CDC is a wholly owned subsidiary of the foundation. Also with Maryland, I think Maryland's also on our books. The closest one in terms of like the way that it's structured in terms of the management agreement, in terms of all the partnership, would be Miami. Miami has all the schools have a separate board. They all run separate authorizations, separate charters. But I think the closest one in terms of like mirroring what it's like in LA would be the situation in Miami. So Miami, they are authorized through the state. And so they have like a slightly different arrangement in terms of like, I think it's similar to like how California and Los Angeles has like all the sunshine rules and the different things to ensure that there are no true conflicts of interest and ensure true objectivity. I think Florida will be the one, Miami will be the one that's closest in terms of like the actual arrangement as LA. But for the most part, I think Jillian kind of covered. I'm no more elegant than I thought I was going to be, but I think for the most part, Jillian pretty much summarized how it is.
You sounded wonderful, Woody. And then I would say, I also have that question around, and if you read through all the contracts around the responsibility, the role of the head of school and the role of the school separate from what they call the CDLA is not defined. And so I do think one of the questions we might have to explore is, under these contracts, the implication is that the head of school or even seed kind of as the school, separate from the CDLA board, are the executioners and are responsible for providing the information. And so it does change and kind of describe a role of the head of school and the school in a very particular way, at least through implication. That's how I saw it. And it's not completely clear, except that we need to make sure this stuff needs to get to the county. This stuff needs to, right? That partnership seems clear to me as I read through.
Some of the other things that to note are, this is a high school that's very different from all of the seed models, just, starting in 9th grade, that's a whole different thing. And that there are certain responsibilities that Seed Foundation has taken on in terms of financing. That is probably different than what they have done in the past in terms of guaranteeing funds and things like that. So, and as well as, sort of the oversight of the boarding component. So there's just some, I think it would be really helpful for us to have Brian talk through all of these questions for us, and we'll, I'm sorry that, he had something come up. So are there any other questions that we want to elevate here though, that we want to highlight?
I was curious if there's any particular contract that stood out just on his summary.
They all stand out. They're all stars in their own right.
That's true.
So I think having Brian walk us through it and the interrelationship between, and in terms of reporting, I think your back is going to cave in, Jillian, with all these reporting requirements. I mean, I think, especially starting out, you're going to be like a one-armed paper hanger. So I don't know about I think we do have to think about who is specifically charged with monitoring these agreements and assembling the information to have it produced at the right time. It looks very onerous to me.
I would say some of it is, I think I'm not gonna, yes, and I'm just gonna say yes. Some of it is duplicative. So there's things that the county requires anyway, that they also wanted to double down in the LA County document, just to be sure, right? Just to be sure. So some of it is like, we need to crosswalk and actually see. I think what we need to figure out is, timing, and, we now need to send it to the foundation. The foundation needs to look at it. Is that in partnership, or is that as an authorizer? And then also we need to send it, once we all are in agreement, then we need to also send it to all the parties that are requesting it, right? So we need to make sense of that. We also need to make sense of kind of XED's role, because in my mind, as I read this and the different agreements, their role is ultimately important, particularly in their back office role of auditing. And so that's not a partnership with the school. That's a partnership actually with Seed Foundation in some ways. And so the relationship there, we need to unpack. That's what, as I was reading it, was making sense of that.
And I don't want to go too in the weeds there, but I have worked with at least one client that has a significant new market tax credit and kind of reporting, lender reporting, bond covenants, all that stuff. And I would say XED, I will own and churn out financials and get that all done on time. But I think where I've seen it struggle is there are a lot of kind of qualitative components that wrap around that financial. And when it's fallen down in places where the person at the organization turns over or leaves. And so then it's me sending financials and trying to get the organization to pull in that qualitative wraparound. So it's really this having somebody with capacity to really dial in on that reporting at the school that I can work with. It's critical to getting this stuff done in a good, complete way, because it's complicated and it is a big ask. Just the new market tax credit, and this is much more complicated than that. So,
While I agree, Kyle, and I hear you 100%. I also want Jillian to focus on making this school a success and not focus on compliance. And so I hear you, but I also want to voice, I don't want this to take up 50% of Jillian's time, right? Just agreeing to all of these. So before we agree to them, I just want to be clear, where do the responsibilities lie? Are these in alignment with our agreement? Can we make sure that we support Jillian in that way so that this isn't onerous, for lack of another word?
Right. And what's the most efficacious and expeditious way to make sure that we dot all our I's and cross our T's to ensure the success of this endeavor, right? So
A really great tickler file. Really a tickle. Because it's impossible to keep all these things in your brain, and so, and I take Jillian's point that they do overlap, and so this fits with that. But I think that's the whole, kind of analysis, diagnosis, and then vesting of responsibility for somebody who really gets this. And I understand Kyle wanting to know that there's somebody on the ground here that he can relate to around these things. So.
Well, so I think the thing to do, unless we have additional questions, we will hold on to all of these questions. We will get them to Brian ahead of time, which would be a great starting point for us. And we will schedule, we can do a doodle poll and see if it's something we can do before the holidays. I know everyone's schedule is getting a little nutty. If not, very early in January, so that, because this is very important stuff for us to sort of get clarity on, right? So yeah, we'll just but I appreciate everyone paying attention to it and reading through it and trying to get some sense of how this all works together. So, if everyone's okay, we can move on. What I would propose though right now is just a 5-minute break. If everyone's okay with that, it could even be, okay, good. A 5-minute break. And then what we're going to do, I'll come back in the 5 minutes and tee us up for the closed session, but just so everyone knows how it's going to work, we're actually going to circulate another Zoom link for the closed session. The people in the closed session are going to move into that other Zoom link, or are we doing a breakout room? Did you figure that out, Woody?
I did not figure out how to do a breakout on here. I think you have to, as the account owner for this particular meeting, would have to change the settings. So
I will,
Right.
I can send out an extra link.
Well, Woody created it, right? Woody, you already created one for us?
I did, but if Jillian has one where she's the owner, that's whatever works. Just let me know. I already created one. If not, Jillian, feel free.
I'll send one out. No worries.
Okay, so so what we'll do is we'll move into this other space. This other link will remain open where Woody is. We'll have our closed session and then we will come back, just so you know. So it is 10:42. Let's just take a 5-minute break. We'll come back. We'll set up the closed session, go into closed session, come out of closed session, go on. You don't have the number, okay?
So
All right.
just to confirm, Ruth, I'm going to keep this line open, and then Jillian will circulate the closed session link for you guys. Okay, got it.
Correct. But first, 5-minute break. Come back to this link where we are. We will get the link for the closed session. Okay? Go
Thank you,
team,
everyone.
go. See you
Thank
in
you.
5. It's 10:43, 5 minutes.
Ruth, I sent it via email.
Yeah, I didn't realize I have this finally fired up my new computer and it changed some settings on things. Like my Zoom settings and
Oh,
stuff.
I know, that's a
Yeah.
nightmare. Yeah.
It's fine, but I also, I'm also just a spaz with this stuff, so.
It's fine.
Yeah, the breakout room thing is above my pay grade, so.
I have, I don't know, I have it on my account, but some people don't have it on the account.
I have it, I just have to change the setting because it defaulted
Oh,
to
that's
the
right.
original, and I don't have time, we don't have time for me to do all that stuff. I just want us to get the job done, so.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, as soon as Rod is back, then we will, you sent it by email. Okay, perfect. I will find it. Where is my email?
Let me know if I missed anybody, but I think I got everybody.
Okay. Just waiting. All right, give me 1 second. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, Rod, are you back?
Yes, I am back.
You're on mute.
Yep, thanks. Great. So Isabel, Jennifer, Rod, myself, Jillian sent us a link to another Zoom. We are going to move into closed session per Government Code Section 54957. Title Head of School. We are going to move into closed session using the link that Jillian provided in the email. We will go into that room. We'll leave this Zoom. This Zoom will remain open. We'll go into closed session, have closed session, and then we will come back to this current Zoom room when we're done. But we can all leave this Zoom and go into the next. Okay? See everybody in a minute. God willing. Okay.
Thanks, Jillian.
Well, you guys, we don't have quorum anymore anyway, so I'll just tell her we're going to wrap up the meeting.
Okay.
Unless you might see her in a minute. Cannot find. Hold on. We are wrapping up. Just let me tell her. Okay, so coming out of closed session per Government Code Section 54957, title Head of School, no action was taken. I can report that no action was taken. So we are now to the next item on our agenda. I'll just, was our board committee. We had talked about creating a resolution to officially form our nominating committee, but we no longer have, oh, there's Jennifer. We no longer have quorum. Hello. So we are not able to vote on that. So we are just going to table that for our next meeting, or the next time we have quorum in our next meeting. So I hope that works for everybody.
Do you need to do a quick summary of the closed session or no?
No, I just needed to let everybody know that no action was taken, and that we discussed per the item on the wherever.
Sorry, I missed that, Ruth. I'm good.
Okay, Thanks. Okay, so it is now 12:05. The Seed School of Los Angeles County Board of Directors meeting is officially adjourned. I just said it's 12:05. Thank you all for being here. Keep a lookout for a schedule for our next meeting. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I'll see everybody multiple times this week, in different places.
See you soon, y'all.
Thank you, everybody.
Good luck on
Thank you
Friday, you
so
guys.
much.
I'm sorry I can't be there.
You can't be
Are you
in
coming on Thursday?
Thursday night to AJU.
Oh, and no, I can't be there either.
Oh, bummer.
Actually, because of our, I think I mentioned this, like when we were planning this, we have our staff holiday.
Woody, you can stop
thing, so-
recording. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, and it's on, I'm gonna try to get there, but I don't think there's any way I'll make it because our staff holiday gathering is out in Descanso Gardens.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no way.
So,
that would
yeah,
track.
so that's why my mind went when you mentioned
No, this
Thursday.
time of year is crazy.
It is.
Seriously, there's so much
Yeah.
on everybody's calendar. It's just crazy. And everyone chooses the exact same few nights to book everything,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yep.
so,
I'm missing
We're
folks
still-
who are gonna come because of holiday parties, so
yeah.
time of year.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I'll
And
see
if
some of
it
you
were
then.
not my office, I would, obviously prioritize this, but we're still recording.
I know, Woody, I asked you to stop, but I don't think you can hear
He's,
me.
yeah,
I'm
he's,
not-
I don't think he's on.
he's probably
Oh,
engaged
Yeah, he's
in,
asleep too. We put
in
everybody to
his day
sleep.
job. He's got another job too. All right.
All right, well, thank
Thanks,
you,
guys.
everybody. So good to see everyone. All right,
Thank you.
Bye.
onward.
Bye.
Bye.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.